Can Arabs solve their problems? Their leaders meet for yet another summit as millions of Arabs remain caught up in wars and conflicts from Syria to Palestine and Yemen. What can these leaders offer? And do these summits serve any purpose at all? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Richelle, Carey. Leaders of the Arab world are in Saudi Arabia for the annual Arab League Summit. The heads of state are discussing a wide range of issues from the wars in Yemen and Syria to Israel's role in the UN Security Council. But they're also clear about what they will not be talking about. The airstrikes by the US, UK, and France in Syria are not on the agenda, nor is the GCC crisis and the Saudi-led blockade on Qatar. The King of Saudi Arabia opened the summit with these words.
The
Palestinian cause remains our paramount issue, and it will remain as such until our Palestinian brothers achieve all their lawful rights, chiefly the establishment of an independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. We renew our rejection and denounce the decision made by the US administration on Jerusalem, and we further reiterate that all the states reject such decisions, emphasizing that East Jerusalem is an integral part of the Palestinian territories.
First topic up for discussion at the Arab Summit was U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He made the controversial announcement at the end of last year, calling Jerusalem the capital of Israel. Yemen is also on the table, with the UAE and Saudi Arabia heavily involved in the war and the humanitarian crisis there. There will be mention of the war in Syria, but not the recent airstrikes. Several member states, including Iraq, have called for quick solutions to the conflict. There is no representative from Syria at the meeting, though. Syria has been suspended from the league since the war began in 2011. Let's bring in our guests now. Joining us from Gaza, Mkhaimer Abu Sada, professor of political science at Al-Ghazar University in Gaza, and then Sana Hakim Al-Masmari, editor-in-chief and publisher of the Yemen Post. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. So let's start with something that is technically not supposed to be on the agenda, but that's actually my question. The recent airstrikes in Syria, the leaders of the Arab Summit have already said that's not something that is going to be on their agenda. Mkhaimer, how does that strike you that something like that is not technically going to be discussed here? And what does that say to you about the role that these leaders see in helping develop some sort of future for Syria?
Well, I believe there are two explanations for this. One is that the Arab Summit has been scheduled from a long time ago, and it was supposed to be held at the end of March, and it has been postponed for mid-April now. And the attack against Syria just took place just yesterday. So yes, maybe that is one of the reasons for not putting this issue on the agenda. And second, there is definitely a very deep differences among Arab leaders and Arab governments with regard to these attacks by the U.S. administration against Syria. I believe we've heard from some of the Arab leaders, some of them who have supported these attacks against Syria, and some of the Arab leaders who were cautious with regard to these attacks, and they were calling for restraint and for the unity of the Syrian territory, and they were concerned that these attacks will probably destabilize the region and cause more tension and friction in the Middle East region.
Hakim, what do you make of the fact that the reports are that leaders of many of these countries at the Arab Summit weren't given any type of heads up that these airstrikes are going to happen in Syria?
It's an embarrassment, Richelle. Never before in the last 100 years have the Arabs been so divided like they are today. In the past, they had somewhat of a unified agenda. Today, they cannot do that because their enemy, their threat is from within the Arab League, is because the nations are fighting themselves. The war in Syria, the war in Yemen, the political tension in Egypt, in Libya, in Somalia are all involved with Arab nations. So the enemy is now from within. In the past, forget the Arab League, the GCC itself was a united front, even though the Arab League was weak. Today, that's a different case. There are nations like Qatar who are not attending the Arab Summit. So not the Arab League, but also the GCC, and the list goes on. And the division does not end with a political tension, but rather war that is being raised. The airstrikes on Syria the other day, 2 days ago, over 100 airstrikes just 2 days before the summit. This is a clear embarrassment of they have no involvement in trying to end this. So the meeting is, it's sad that it's being held today and with their heads raised up as if the Arab nations are living years of prosperity, forgetting the humanitarian crisis that's pouring on many nations, the airstrikes that are bombarding countries like Yemen and Syria, the attacks from within, the political tension, and they're still meeting as if nothing had happened and threatening or putting the blame or scapegoat on Iran instead of trying to solve their problems. Yemen is right next door to Saudi Arabia, but the blame is to Iran, not Yemen, because Iran is a powerful nation and Yemen is a weak nation. So Saudi is attacking Yemen and not Iran.
Hakeem, let me jump in for just a minute because you actually brought in a lot of issues that we are going to address, but I want to bring in now who's going to join the conversation, Sami Nader, Director of the Levant Institute for Strategic Affairs. And Sami, thank you so much for joining us. I want to bring you into the discussion that we're having about Syria, and to the point that Hakeem made. I asked him, you know, the reports are that the leaders at this summit, most of them were not, really none of them actually were told, were given a heads up about this airstrike in Syria, something that clearly on some level affects them. What does that say to you that they weren't? And what role do the leaders here play in the future of Syria when a lot of them are not even on the same page about it?
First of all, let's keep in mind that the Arab League has suspended Syria membership in 2012. Why? Because most of the Arab League countries are at odds with the Syrian regime and the regime of Assad in particular. And when it comes to the strike, it's not the first strike. I mean, this is a sanction act. It has been done 1 year ago, and the process was put in place when the agreement were reached between the Russian and the American. So this act is mostly came as a response to an agreement that was not honored, and this is the Western version, namely the American version of it, and the President Trump said it very clearly, blaming Russia for not putting enough pressure on Assad or to respect the non-use of a chemical weapon, and he named Russia responsible for this. Secondly, behind this chemical attack, there is definitely a message that the West want to send to Russia. So it's more a Russian-Western affair than something that deals with a political settlement in Syria. Now, yes, Mr. Trump hinted to the Geneva process. Today, France, or yesterday, France called for a more active role of the United Nations, a leading role in order to push for a settlement in Syria. And I expect the Arab League today to push into the same direction. In this case, yes, definitely, the Arab countries should be consulted, and as it was put by the Egyptian president today during the summit, the Arab are the main concerned with what's happening in Syria, and it's after all and before all an Arab affair.
So, Mkhaimer, what about that? I mean, to Sami's point, Syria has been isolated and suspended from the League for years now. In the past few years, at least, the opposition was, in fact, brought in, invited to the summit. They're not this year. And there's so much division among the countries there about what they even think about Syria. Having said all of that, isolating Syria has not worked. What role do these countries play in some sort of solution to Syria?
Well, definitely, it's a very important issue which has been brought by Sami, that Syria's membership in the Arab League was suspended in the year of 2012 after the eruption of the Syrian civil war, which erupted after March 15 of 2011, when the Arab Spring erupted in a number of Arab countries. And yes, Syria has been isolated and has been boycotted by many Arab countries and many Arab regimes. But I believe that there are a number of Arab countries who are insisting in bringing back Syria again to the membership of the Arab League. I believe there are about 10 Arab countries who are calling for bringing Syria back because Syria has managed to survive the past 7 years of civil war, and also Syrians' ability to defeat the so-called terrorists or ISIS in a number of areas in the Syrian territory, and with the support of the Russians and the Iranians for the Assad regime. It seems to me that it doesn't make any sense to neglect these military facts or these political facts in Syria, and that's why there are calls for bringing Syria back to the Arab League. Now, whether that is going to happen in future Arab summits or not, but at least there is still a big division among the Arab leaders with regard to the Syrian civil war and with regard to also to the U.S. airstrikes against Syria. We all have heard from a number of Arab countries who supported the U.S. airstrikes against Syrian army, and there are Arab countries like Egypt who were hesitant to support such airstrikes and calling for restraint, and that such airstrikes will cause further destabilization in Syria and in the Middle East. But overall, I believe that this is one of the most contentious issues that is facing the Arab leaders in this summit, and definitely maybe this Arab summit will even deepen the division among Arab leaders and Arab governments.
Okay, let's pivot to the issue that is apparently going to be the leading issue at the summit. King Salman already referenced it, obviously that being the Palestinians, and specifically he spoke of U.S. Donald Trump declaring Jerusalem the capital of Israel. But this is something that the Saudis had not done before. There's been not a lot of pushback against the announcement that Donald Trump made. Hakeem, let me bring you into that. Why is that there hasn't been more pushback, and what does that say to the Palestinians?
Sadly, the Palestinian civil war or occupation is now sidelined because of the Arab nations dividing between themselves. Israel sees that it's the best time to act as it pleases, and I don't blame them. I don't blame the smart for being smart. I blame the dumb for being dumb. If someone is not doing his job as a political leader, then I can't blame the enemy for being smarter than him. Palestine today is a lost case. So whatever happens in the summit won't even help the Palestinians. There are even sides who are, or governments within the Arab League who are coordinating with Israel before the summit itself. It's an embarrassment. If I was an Arab leader, I would be forced to come maybe, but I would at least cover my face while attending the meeting. For Yemen, for example, 3 years, we entered the 4th year of war. All of this because to return President Hadi back to power, and until today he's still living in Saudi Arabia. After 3+ years, he's still living in Saudi. Yes, he has an easy trip to the summit, but it's an embarrassment that all these crises are not being solved, whether it's in Yemen, in Palestine, in Syria. All of these countries will face lost cases, division from within. So I don't have no idea why the Arabs are even meeting just to ensure to the world that we are more divided than you think. That's the message that's being sent out today.
Let me
that
put
we're not divided, we're very much divided.
Okay, let me put that to Sami. Sami, do you agree with the pretty gloomy picture that Hakeem is painting of of the lack of unity at the Arab summit and the fact that he says that the Palestinian cause is a lost cause?
The lack of unity is not a new thing. Rarely the Arab League got a unified position on some issue, maybe with the exception of the Palestinian issue. They have a unified position, though they don't have a unified strategy. But most of the Arab countries agreed and are supporting the strategy of what we call the Arab Initiative in 2002, which is the Arab peace offer that consists into the peace in return of the land, or the land in return of peace more exactly. However, what we call the axis of resistance, the Syria and a non-Arab country, Iran, is having a different strategy, a strategy of confronting Israel even at one country level or two country level, yes, not seeking a unified position. And this has weakened the Arab position. Today, for most of the Arab countries, at least the GCC countries, and even Egypt, when we hear the speech of President Sisi today, the main concern is Iran. They see Iran as the major threat. It's at the expense, definitely, of other important issues like the Palestinian issue, like the Syrian people rights.
So, Sami, let me ask you.
But today, the number one.
So, to that point, so are you
and how to confront Iran?
Are you saying that you think that putting that much attention on Iran, I mean, you can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but it seems like you're saying that you think that too much energy is being put into Iran at the expense of other things? Is that what you think?
Too much, yes, and definitely today there should be a new dynamic, more efforts put towards pushing this Arab initiative, because in my view, this is the best way to counter America's decision toward Jerusalem. Because the United States, what they have done, unfair move, if you can put it in this way. They have to give to the Palestinian what they gave to the Israeli. They gave only on one hand, and they kept the other hand closed, the one that should have given something to the Palestinian. And the best way to push America towards more opening to the Palestinian is once again to push for this Arab initiative. And I won't be surprised that this will be the number one issue today at the Arab summit. But I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of the Saudi Arabia, for instance, when the Saudi soil is like targeted by a Houthi missile, and they are accusing directly Iran of equipping those Houthi with this missile, it's normal that their number one concern, most of their effort are deployed in order to fend off the Iranian influence in the region that took a great advantage during the Obama year, and
yes,
took advantage of Obama's decision to unilaterally withdraw from Iraq.
Mkhaimer,
because they filled the void.
Mkhaimer, who is to blame for this lingering conflict in Yemen and the humanitarian crisis, and the fact that Saudi is hosting the summit? Do you think there's going to be any real brutal honesty in the discussions about what's going on there, considering their role in bombing Yemen?
Well, if you could just allow me to respond to what was mentioned by Hakeem earlier about the Palestinian cause as a lost cause. I think it's too early and premature to say that the Palestinian cause is a lost cause. Yes, there is a Palestinian internal division which has been going on for more than 10 years now, but that doesn't justify at all to say that the Palestinian cause is a lost cause. I believe that the Palestinian people have paid heavy casualties over the past 70 years, and especially since the Israeli occupation of West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem in 1967. And the Palestinian people are willing to do whatever it takes to put an end to this Israeli occupation and settlement expansion and restore their national unity and establish a Palestinian independent over their occupied territory. Now, going back to your question and who is responsible for this lingering in Yemen, unfortunately, what is happening in Yemen is part of the Arab internal division. It's part of the Arab rivalries, and especially the perceived threat from the Iranians in the region is, I think, the major cause for this lingering position in Yemen. And now it's no secret that Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates are leading a war in Yemen to try to contain the Iranian Shiite threat in Yemen and also in the Gulf region, and also to stop the Houthis from making further advances in Yemen. Now, it seems to me that
Mkhaimer,
there is
Mkhaimer, for just a minute, though, I do want to bring Hakeem into this because Yemen is his area of expertise, and I want to bring him into this, and I want to put that question to you. Saudi Arabia is hosting the summit. Saudi Arabia is bombing Yemen. It is creating one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Is there going to be any real brutal honesty there about what is happening and what to do about it, Hakeem?
There will be a lot of blaming and finger pointing. Again, when I said that Palestine is a lost case, I'm not saying it from happiness. It's sad but I'm being realistic that this is what the Arab countries are witnessing today and living today. Yemen, for example, before in the previous summits, at least the Arabs were trying to solve their problems. In the last couple of years, it's not solving anymore. It's just trying to find a scapegoat or fingers to blame that who is the reason. For example, Iran, they're being blamed for Yemen. I have no doubt that they're involved in supporting the Houthis some way or the other. But again, 3 years of war, 3+ years of war, and there has been no advancements over the last 19 to 20 months. There hasn't. The president himself is still living in Riyadh. There's no success story in any of the cities that have been controlled by the coalition. So people were hopeful that the coalition might come and help Yemen, but there hasn't been that in Yemen, and that's why people are losing hope that this war is supposed to take long. The international community or the international powers, in coordination with the Gulf countries, mainly Saudi and the UAE, are purposely trying to make Yemen war continue longer and longer. The humanitarian crisis doesn't care. It doesn't.
Say that again about continuing to. Go ahead.
Yeah, the idea, it's not trying to end the war. As I said earlier, 20 months of war in Yemen, there has been very, very little, 5 to 10 kilometers of success for any side. So it's been a complete stalemate. There has been no development, major development in the Yemen war. Both sides are in stalemate. So most Yemenis now believe that this war is supposed to take long. The agenda is for the Yemen war to continue and not to be solved. There is no success story for any city that has been taken over or controlled by the Saudi-led coalition supported government. There's no success story. There's clashes everywhere. There's human rights violations every day, assassinations happening in those cities. So this war is supposed to take long. Yemenis are convinced that it's not in Saudi's hands anymore. Saudi is just a reason to have this war continue longer and longer for other side interests that are involved by the international community. So there's no hope for Yemenis to end this war, not because peace is not, there's no place for peace, but because there's no real willingness to end this war because of the major international interests that are developing and will continue to develop over the next couple of years. And Yemen has to continue to be divided in order for these interests to continue.
Okay, so we will have to see how all of these really important issues are actually addressed at the summit. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining me. Sami, Nader, Mkhaimer, Abu Sada, and Hakeem al-Masmari. Gentlemen, thank you. And thank you for watching. You can watch the program again anytime if you go to our website, aljazeera.com. And for the discussion, go to our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For me, Richelle, Carey, and the entire team. Bye for now.